just another night for Supernatural Girlz. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girlz.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girlz. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and it is spooky October in Supernatural Girlz Radio. And I'm here with my co-host, the fabulous numerologist, Patricia Kirkman, PK, all the way from Tucson. What's happening, PK?
It is a very warm day today. And the sun is bright. It's a feel good, but you can feel the fall because what trees we have are now turning yellow and they're starting to lose leaves. That's unusual, but it's nice.
Oh, you have your own brand of fall.
Yes.
Sun.
That's right. Yeah. We'll eventually have cool weather, I hope.
Yes. Well, it's been gorgeous here. It's summer-like weather here in New England, and the leaves are spectacular. Just gorgeous. So I've been out taking pictures, posting them on my Facebook page. It's really a sight to see. I love it here in the fall. Oh,
you've taken some beautiful pictures.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just love to see those leaves so vibrant. So once again, we have another crazy week, and you've been watching the news. I love all the articles you've been sending me about the election. And tell us, what's going on, PK? What's going on with our numerology predictions, and what's going on with that election? What do you think's happening?
The election is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. It's going to be very interesting to see what falls out from tonight's combination because as it is today universally, it's a day to be a team player, putting things together, and the sensitive side may be showing. And we already know that we've got Donald, who's extremely sensitive, and Hillary, who is totally insensitive. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they're going to appear. One's going to come across much stronger than the other, which else is new, but it's how they're going to proceed taking care of it. Because like everybody today, share and care, it's just what it's all about. But it's important for people to keep their word. Now we're going to watch a lying debate go on like crazy tonight. So that says we are going to have to take a second look at what's said because a lot of it's coming out of the side of the mouth. But tomorrow, that's where the thing is going to be because it's all about change and changing, creating things that are even better. But what's said today is going to come across with a more positive side tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of creative juices going on, coming to and from people. But it's going to make people want to emulate some of the things they hear. And other ideas are going to be very, very difficult. So at that point in time, it's going to be getting their ideas across, but it's going to be a great time to put everything else in order. So be careful of what you say tonight because it's going to be twisted. What comes out tomorrow, it's going to come across as more upbeat, and then all of a sudden there's going to be a big slamming of the door coming real quick thereafter.
Wow. What about more information coming out? Is this a time for that? Less secrets?
Yeah. We're going to see more things tomorrow because it's all about communications.
Oh, and poor Julian Assange, he's gotten his internet cut off in Ecuador, at the Ecuadorian embassy, I should say. He claims, somebody's claiming it was John Kerry, that doofus. So, yeah, I mean, here's a guy who's working hard to bring these secrets to light, tell the truth, and of course they want to silence him. So I hope he can stay alive, because you know what happens when cross the Clintons.
That's right. They just seem to disappear with a bullet or a accidental death that they, accidentally shot themselves with a gun that's clear on the other side of the room. God.
They shot themselves 3 times. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this case of suiciditis that seems to hit a lot of their people that they don't have use for anymore. So we got to keep a close eye on all these things. We're going to follow your advice and be careful what we say tonight, and just watch this all unfold. So it's an alchemical time, I think, for this country. And do people really want to change? And I just want to point something out. I wrote a new blog, and if you haven't seen it, go to our website, which is supernaturalgirlz.com. And I mean, one thing that I found so interesting is the same mainstream media, I call it the lamestream media, that disses all of us in the paranormal world, all of us who've had UFO encounters or ghost encounters or whatever. They're the same media that's pumping Hillary as their candidate. So I just want to point that out.
Scary, isn't it?
Noticed, yeah, it's the same media. It's the same media that laughs in our faces, refuses to report on these very important stories, especially when it involves ETs. And they are the very same ones that are in Hillary's pocket, and they're owned by all these other people, and their journalism is a joke.
Yeah,
but they don't, they just don't want to cover these stories. They want to make it out like we're the crazy ones, we're the fringe, nobody wants to hear this, when that's not the case at all. So I just want to point this out, because we have 2.3 million listeners to our audience. And so certainly there are a number of people listening, and there's a lot of other shows like ours that have big audiences. People are interested. They want to know the truth. They know that what they can see with their 5 senses, there's more to it than that. They know that. And they want the truth. That's why they come here.
Well, sure. And if you go back and they're talking about repeating of history, isn't this what Hitler did? He took away the right to hear the truth, then hid their heads in the sand, and then acted like it's their fault.
Exactly. And so, we in the paranormal world, we have seen this happen. We've experienced it firsthand, that when we try to, speak up about these things, we are slapped down hard. Take a look at that blog, everybody, at supernaturalgirlz.com, and sign up for the Fringe Files. That is our weekly newsletter. Lets you know what the shows are that are coming up, and some cool paranormal news.
Oh, so yes.
We've always got cool paranormal news. And in fact, we have paranormal news tonight that's very, very unusual. Now, we've had people on our show. Remember John Titor? The second, he was talking about Dulcie.
Right.
And remember that? The underground alien installation?
That's right.
He was talking about a big firefight that happened there. He got secondhand information about it. Well, there is an article. It's on our Facebook page. If you haven't been there, take a look. And it says that the Dulcie residents are saying that they're seeing strange things all the time. UFOs, Bigfoot. They're seeing things open up from the ground and stuff coming up out of the ground. I mean, there's a lot. And this is a Native American area. So they interviewed a number of Native Americans about this, and they came forward and said, hey, yes, this has been going on. And we also think the government is involved with mind control.
No.
Isn't that a shock?
Would that be something?
Yeah. So they think they're doing experiments at Dulcie underground, and it's involving mind control. And also Bigfoot, they feel, is somehow involved with all this. I don't quite get the involvement there, but that's what they're saying. So these are the residents that live there every day and are seeing these strange things, and they know it's connected to this underground government base.
Amazing.
So there you have it.
If they'll ever just once tell us even a fraction of the truth. Look how fulfilling that would be.
Wouldn't that be nice? I'm telling you what, but we're
definitely
not would. We're just going to keep reporting the truth right here on Supernatural Girlz. That's what we do.
Yes.
So there.
You're a good girl for finding this to tell the rest of us about.
I know it. But tonight we have a very special guest, do we not? Judika Illes. She is an amazing woman, let me tell you. She is an author of some of the most outstanding books, the Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells. This thing is huge, and it's beautiful. It's got everything about spells in there. This I would like to get as a Christmas present, I'll tell you right now. It's a gorgeous book filled with great info. And she also has a new book out called The Fantastic and the Forgotten, no extra the in there. And we're going to be talking with Judika tonight about myths and monsters, because we know that these occult tales have a grain of truth in them. And she's going to help us get to the bottom of all this and figure out what's what. But these stories in The Fantastic and Forgotten are so incredible. This is a great book to read out loud on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
The nice fire going,
Yes.
It takes turns reading these stories. They are so rich and so beautiful, and it takes you back in time. Mm-hmm. It's just a great book, and Judika edited this beautifully. So let's bring this lady on. We got to talk to her. Judika, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure.
I was going to say, we're both excited to have you here. I know I've been waiting all day, waiting for it's time for us to go on so I could speak with you. Great.
So we're talking with you about the newest book, but you have many books.
Yeah.
And you also do readings, so I want people to know that right up front. And you did a wonderful reading for me today. It was terrific with the tarot cards. It was a great reading and right on the money. So people can find you how? Where do they go on the internet, Judika?
Oh, I am all over the internet. You can find me. I'm not hard to find, and I do answer. Sometimes I'm a little slow, but I do answer. I have a website, which is myname.com, judikailles.com, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, and
you're a busy girl. We're glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Yes, so it's Judika Illes, ILLES.com. That's how you spell it.
Yes, JUDIKAILLES.
There we go. We got it now. So, Judika, how did you get involved with this book, The Fantastic and the Forgotten? It's such a beautiful book, and it's so wonderful. How did this come to you?
I had the opportunity to edit it and to select the stories, and it was really an honor. We were discussing before that there's an earlier book in this series, the Book of the Horror and the Occult, which was edited by Lon Milo Duquette, and those are some big footsteps to fill.
That's for sure.
I had the opportunity, because he's so wonderful, author, wonderful speaker, wonderful musician.
Yes.
And I was given this opportunity to select the stories and introduce the stories. And I really love esoteric paranormal fiction. So that was a rare opportunity for me because it's not really what I do most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time you're writing nonfiction.
Yeah. My history is in writing nonfiction.
So this is something new. But what we wanted to talk about with you tonight is the truth about these monsters and things that go bump in the night, because these people, as we discussed, they write these stories, but there's some truth in them. What stories can you tell us? Some spooky stuff, because it's spooky October here. What are the spooky stories you have for us?
You want fictional stories? You want real stories?
No, you want the real
stuff. Yes,
audience.
definitely.
Oh, well, I can speak from my experience, and then also the book, the Weiser Book of the Fantastic and the Forgotten, they're old vintage esoteric stories, and what people have to remember is until the 1950s, it was illegal in many places to write books like my books, because you were not allowed to write anything that promoted witchcraft or anything that taught people how to do it. It could only be written as fiction. And so many of the stories in that collection were written by people who were authorities on the paranormal, on the occult, and really that was their only way to pass on the information to other people in a safe and legal way. I mean, So
wait a second. You're saying it was actually illegal to write about the paranormal?
The witchcraft, well, not to write about the paranormal if you were being disrespectful towards it or if you were mocking it, but the last Witchcraft Act in the United Kingdom and I'm not looking at my facts, but it's the early 1950s. Before that, you were not allowed to write anything that glorified it or promoted it or anything that presented it as authentic or real. You could
Wow. I mean, I had no idea. Did you know this, PK? That it was
I had heard something about that in the past, and a few people, that's why they're very cautious when they start talking about it. Even today, some of the ladies that I have that work at the fair that are involved with witchcraft, people get absolutely paranoid as soon as they say witchcraft, but they don't realize that it's another genre of something totally different.
Yes. I have 4 very large encyclopedias. We were discussing 5,000 spells, but I have another one called the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, which is a history of witches and entertainment with witches and all sorts of ephemera about witches, but it actually goes through the history of laws about witchcraft, because, it's really only recently that you could speak about it in a rational and calm manner. So I'm thinking in particular there is one of the authors in Fantastic and Forgotten is a woman named Dion Fortune, and Dion Fortune was really just an authority on Western mysticism. She an expert on Arthurian legends and just very, very prolific author. And there is a vampire story in there, and it's written in the format of a detective story. She has a detective, a psychic detective, and he is also a psychologist, because back then, this story was published in about 1926. Back then, psychology was considered something somewhat paranormal. It wasn't considered as, humdrum as it might be today. So she has this psychologist who also, investigates the usual cases, but also some very unique cases. And if you actually read the story, she's trying to discreetly give instructions on how to deal with psychic vampires, how to deal with people who vampirize your energy in an unhealthy way. And so you have to, it's a great story. It's a fun story. But there's also some instruction in there if you read between the lines. So
that's fascinating.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's also appalling that we may not have even realized how censored things have been for so long. I mean, 1950s is not that long ago, and how that's horrifying to me. That's the horror story. Is here we are back at the press, and also the whoever declared these laws, these legislators, how restrictive it is for people involved in the paranormal. I've got a question for you, Judika, from the chat room. And this is Para Abnormal, who wrote, how many stories should we expect to get from the book?
How many stories? I believe, let me double check. I believe there are 18. There are 18 stories. The book is called The Fantastic and the Forgotten, because fantastic, not just in the sense that they're really good stories, which they are, but in the sense of fantastic as something beyond the ordinary, because that's the old-fashioned sense of the word fantastic. It's fantastic. It's beyond the mundane, and forgotten, because some of these authors, some of these stories were once well known and are no longer. So there are some stories you might recognize. There's Dracula's Guest by Bram Stoker, which was originally a chapter that was not included in the novel Dracula. But
that's a great story. I loved reading that.
I love that story.
I thought it was
awesome.
And it's
a standalone. You don't have to have seen one of the 50,000 versions, movie versions of Dracula, and you don't have to have read the book, even though it's really good. You can just read it as a standalone story. But after Bram Stoker died, his widow published it, I think in a desire to raise some funds, published the story. So Dracula's Guest is in there, and I think the most famous story is The Monkey's Paw, with be careful what you wish for. Although I find very few people have actually read the story. They know the message of the story, but haven't necessarily actually read it or even realized that it's a piece of fiction. Many people think it's a folktale. And then there are some less famous stories. There is a story, a beautiful ghost story, The Lady with the Carnations by Marie Corelli. And Marie Corelli, before World War I, was one of the world's most famous authors. She was Queen Victoria's favorite author. Winston Churchill read her. She was a bestseller. She sold more books during her time than Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wow.
Yeah, she was a star. And it's like as if we said, 100 years from now, no one would know who J.K. Rowling was. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't believe it. But Marie Corelli, for her time, was on that level, and her specialty were these very mystical, very kind of romantic stories. I read one as a child. We had one in the house. And the one I read was a Egyptian reincarnation romance. And it made an incredible impression on me. To this day, I love a good reincarnation story. And I think it stems back to Marie Corelli. So that's probably my favorite story in the book.
And how transformative these stories are. I mean, here you're talking about one you read as a child that made such an indelible impression. And again, that's the thing about these stories. And when we talked with Lon, they transform you when you read them. Rather than the bubblegum stuff we watch on TV, this is really, it takes you to another time. It just gives you a richness of story that you can't get anywhere else. Now, let's go back to the vampires.
Yes.
What's your thought on that? Are they real?
I think there are different kinds of vampires. Do you know, I very rarely say something is not real because I have seen ghosts all my life. Mm-hmm. And this is something I discuss in the introduction to Fantastic and Forgotten. I have always seen ghosts, without trying. Since I was a child, I've seen them. And so I was very aware from a very young age that I could see things that clearly nobody else was seeing. And so I'm not quick to discount other people's experiences. If people tell me they've had these experiences, I have an open mind. When we did the sound check, so it was noticed that I do have a Hungarian name, and I was born in the U.S., but my parents are from Hungary, and I was raised on folktales. And I am sure that the traditional Central European, Balkan type of vampire does exist. That folkloric vampire is very different than Dracula or the vampires we see on television. The really traditional vampire is, in the Balkan area, the same word, which is a variation of vampire, is used to refer to witches and werewolves and vampires. And the belief is that people with either a very, very strong life force or a lot of esoteric knowledge, a lot of magical knowledge, and maybe non-magical knowledge used in all the right ways, that those people will sort of automatically become vampiric spirits when they die. They're not charming. They're not suave. What they do is they rise from the grave, and they typically come home. They go to their families first, if only because, where do you go when you're disoriented? You go home. And they tend to bring disease with them, and often their presence will be recognized because all of a sudden in a village, people will start getting very sick or dying with these sort of wasting away diseases, vague diseases that are hard to diagnose, but they're contagious, and people just fade away. And essentially, whether consciously or unconsciously, the vampire sucks the life essence, not necessarily blood, but more the energy field from the living, and becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And that kind of a vampire, I'm fairly certain exists.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of scary. I mean, to think you'd be
very scary
with your family after burying one of your relatives, and then they show up at the door, and they don't have good things to spread around. So, yeah. Now, in your
funeral rituals to prevent this from happening, which
right now there
are 5,000 spells.
Right. They talk about a number of things besides staking. Something about a stone block or something put in their mouths.
Well, these are really old traditions before people really had concrete. Often it's thorny plants, as simple as thorny plants, planting brambles and rose bushes on the grave because allegedly that keeps them down. A lot of iron spikes, railroad spikes, through the body, through the grave, things like that. Different kinds of plants also allegedly will prevent the vampire from rising.
Now, there have been stories about Highgate Cemetery in the UK.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard them. And this is more of what we know to be a traditional vampire. People have seen strange things, and they've reported them, and as well as New Orleans.
You took the words out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. I spend a lot of time in New Orleans. I'll be back in August to teach classes, and you hear a lot of stories. So,
yes.
Who am I to say they're not true?
Yeah, I tend to believe them. I think that these entities exist, whether they were human at one time or not. I don't know.
Right.
But it's an interesting thing. I mean, this supposed myth has persisted all throughout so many cultures. There has to be
something. Whether we understand it properly is a different story.
Exactly.
When we talk so much about the psychic vampires being around people that could actually, you'll feel fine, and by the time they leave you, you feel like you've been totally depleted.
Yes, and I know that to be true for a fact.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that you spend time with them and you feel energized and empowered, and it's a very good experience. And then you have people, even if you had a pleasant experience with them, there nothing went wrong, you're just exhausted.
It takes every bit of energy.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you that there's some people I do the skull experiment with, and we get together and we find things out and have experiences with the other side and other dimensions. One of the things that came through once, which was very unusual, was that there was like a planet of these vampires, but they weren't, as you mentioned, they're very different than the traditional vampires that have come through the Dracula culture. These entities, what they had was the ability to know somebody's entire genetic structure and history all the way back to the beginning. And they were masters at genetic history. And there was a whole planet of them. And
that's fascinating.
Isn't that interesting? And so blood to them is simply history. History.
And that makes so much sense. I mean, and we're just learning. We're just beginning to learn about DNA and
exactly. We're just like little infants at this. Yeah. But anyways, this was a whole planet of these entities. Very interesting conversation that we had with several of them. So anyways, well, we're going to have to take a little break. But in the meantime, you guys can go take a look at Supernatural Girlz, the website, supernaturalgirls.com. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. Join the community. We've got a great community, a great audience here. And we are speaking with a terrific guest tonight, Judika Illes. She is the author of a terrific book, the editor of The Fantastic and Forgotten, and the author of Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells and the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft. and other things. This woman, I don't know when she has time to sleep. Anyways, stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back.
Listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
My name is Ezra, and I'm from thehighend.org. You've heard of medical marijuana, but who can you trust for proper guidance? Here at thehighend.org, we have all the information you need. Did you know that scientists have discovered cannabis can reduce inflammation, pain, and spasms? It's helped my patients reduce the symptoms of autoimmune diseases, PTSD, autism, and insomnia. A compound from hemp called CBD is doing wonders for intestinal issues, anxiety, and the nervous system. I sell this compound at thehighend.org. I've worked as a medical marijuana consultant and educator for the past 6 years, and here at thehighend.org, I can help you choose from the hundreds of cannabis strains and products and find the ones that are best for your needs. To learn more about cannabis, schedule a Skype or phone consultation, or to have a CBD product shipped right to your door, visit thehighend.org. That's thehighend, all one word, .org. I'll help make your health high-end.
Hi, can you hear my voice? Imagine how many other people can hear it too. If you have advertising needs, then look no further. The Inception Radio Network currently has openings for on-air advertisements and radio show sponsorships. Given any thought to your target demographic? Inception has you covered there too. Advertising on a network gives you multiple opportunities to advertise on a wide variety of radio show broadcasts, and we have one to fit every advertising need. You know, in recent years, internet radio has exhibited a phenomenal listener growth. An Arbitron Edison survey shows that online radio boosts at least 33 million unique visitors each week and 54 million each month. And that number amazingly continues to grow. And these listeners are a part of many businesses' core demographics. And surveys have shown that internet radio listeners are far more likely than regular radio listeners to spend money on a whole range of activities. You know, internet listeners vote, they dine out and eat fast food, and they grab a cup of coffee. And here's the interesting one. They buy items online at a much higher rate than all other market segments combined. Internet radio also enables businesses to connect with consumers during work hours, where increasingly more lifestyle decisions are being made. Advertise with the best. The Inception Radio Network offers competitive advertising rates to fit just about anyone's advertising budget. Stop by today at www.inceptionradionetwork.com or call us toll-free at 1-888-919-2355. Get the word out. Get results with the Inception Radio Network.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girlz Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I'm here with my co-host, PK, and our amazing guest tonight, Judika Illes, who has written amazing books that you all should go out and buy. The Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells and The Fantastic and Forgotten are sitting right in front of me. But before we go further, I have to apologize to our listeners because, PK, I made a mistake last week. You know, I got so excited about Supernatural coming back on this fall. And it used to be on a Wednesday night. So I thought it's on a Wednesday night, right? So I was talking about it, you know, Devin was excited about it, and we all have to go watch it. Darn it, they changed it to Thursday. So I was disappointed, and I want to say to everybody, I'm sorry I got the dates and time screwed. Well, the time is the same, but it's on Thursday night now. So
they didn't want to compete with us.
They did not, which is a good thing. And
definitely.
We're still trying to get some of those guys on the show to talk about their paranormal experiences. That would be fun.
Oh, definitely.
Anyway, Supernatural is now on Thursday nights, everybody. So it's a kind of slow start, but I know they'll pick it up. So anyway, so Judika, we are talking about werewolves now. We're moving on. Werewolves and demons. What do you got on those two things?
Well, personal experience more with the ghosts. But, you know, the world is a complicated place. The world is a complicated place. You know, demons, avoid them is basically the advice. You know, that is the best advice I can give is avoid them. And there are all different types of demons. There are, you know, extremely powerful and intelligent and articulate demons, and, you know, which many people know, the famous demons. But then there are also the sort of little low-level, not super intelligent, not super articulate demons that I think people sometimes, you know, I think people don't take them seriously. But you should take them seriously because they cause trouble. And, you know, I have, in 5,000 Spells, there is a section on working with all sorts of spiritual entities, you know, from the positive to the negative. You know, in the negative, it's mainly how to avoid them or how to get rid of them if you have inadvertently brought them in. One of the things to be very careful with is to, if you are engaged in any kind of spiritual communication, to know who it is that you are speaking with or communicating with or summoning or asking for favors from. You know, be aware in the same way that in a busy city, in a busy modern city, you wouldn't throw your door open and just say, you know, who wants to come in? You know, you're all welcome. We're selective about whom we invite into our homes. Similarly, if there's, you know, and I mean, I have a lot of happy experiences with spiritual interaction, as do many people, but you need to know who they are.
And sometimes these things get in the door, and you don't even know it. How do you know one is around if you didn't invite it in?
Well, there are different ways. Sometimes things just keep going wrong. That's one way. Sometimes it's a creepy feeling. And we have all, we all have psychic abilities. Some people have more developed psychic abilities. I actually think that these are vestigial human abilities. I think that if we were going back to our ancestors thousands of years ago, not 2,000 or 3,000, but 10,000 or 12,000, I think a lot of what we call paranormal abilities, telepathy, the ability to move things with your mind, all sorts of telekinesis, I think that these were more ordinary abilities, but as we no longer need them, they've just sort of faded away, but occasionally show up genetically. And you can develop these skills. And, the joy of magic spells ultimately is finding your own inner power. What are your gifts? More than just, people like, a love spell or a money spell or something like that. But the real gift is discovering what are your gifts, what are your powers, what makes you a unique and strong person. What can you do that you don't know you can do? And that's totally, totally fascinating. Often people will just know, like we all have walked into a room and felt happy. We walk into a room and it feels good. We feel peaceful, we feel at home. And the converse is we've all walked into a room and it felt creepy. And sometimes these are professional rooms, doctors' offices sometimes, hospitals.
Sometimes it just kind of creeps up on you in a strange way. Like you're just going about doing your business in your home, doing your stuff, and you may not notice right away that things are going wrong or things don't feel the way they should. Yeah. So I think it's an important thing to know in your book of 5,000 spells, how to get rid of these things and maybe do even a weekly clearing. So these things can't take hold.
And there are different ways. I was going to say, it doesn't even have to be weekly, depending on what you're doing. Monthly would be really good. I have another spell book, the Big Book of Practical Spells, and it's a little smaller than 5,000. Well, it's a lot smaller than 5,000 spells. But 5,000 spells, for people who haven't seen it, is over 1,000 pages. So Big Book of Practical Spells is a normal big book, and it has more instruction. So if you're not familiar with what we're discussing, it's a good place to begin. If you're doing any sort of spiritual work, if you're whatever, if it's mystical, if it's paranormal, if you're going into houses with ghostly activity or wandering through cemeteries, things can follow you home, and they're not always ghosts. There are entities that are attracted to those places. If you get scared a lot, because there are entities that like fear. If you go to a national park, they tell you to be careful with your garbage, because bears will come for the food.
Right.
You don't want to attract the bear, so be careful how you store your food. Well, there are beings out there that really like fear. That's their honey. And so if you find yourself in a lot of situations, whether it's a paranormal situation or, if you're in an abusive relationship and you're afraid for your life, if you have a lot of fear, then you do need to guard yourself against these things, because it's in their best interest to keep you afraid. They like you to be afraid.
And at that point, you may need help from a professional who can help you kind of deal with it.
There is a point where you might need help from a professional.
Right. Oh,
but in the meantime, you can do a weekly cleansing, you can do a small weekly cleansing, and maybe a bigger monthly cleansing. You can clean your space, and you can cleanse yourself also. Really simple cleansing, really simple, inexpensive cleansing is to take a bath, dump a lot of salt in the water, and it can be really good Dead Sea salt. You can go and buy extra strong salt, but you can just also go to your local drugstore and buy the 59-cent table salt because it's better than nothing.
Right. And so that's an easy way to do that. Now, I've got a question for you from the chat room. This is from Elisa Greco, and she says, hello, what is your take on demons being portrayed as fallen angels in Hollywood?
Well, the concept of the demon as the fallen angel derives from the Bible. Whether you perceive them as followers of Lucifer in the battle in heaven, or as the watchers, the rebel angels who, got in trouble with some. They were supposed to only be observers, but they became enamored of human women and became involved. So it does have roots. It has roots in reality, but we have to remember that when you are watching a movie or a television show, it's all about the entertainment.
It is.
All about the entertainment.
They don't care about basing it on anything in reality.
It's not about accuracy. It's not about people's well-being. It is all about the entertainment, and at the most neutral, without being judgy about it, at the most neutral, they're trying to tell a story in a visual way. I get a lot of emails based on my books from people who are new to spellcasting and Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans.
Yay!
Me too. But I call this, the Willow Rosenberg School of Spellcasting, and people are very frustrated because when Willow does a spell, first of all she has to do is get the ingredients. It's like a chemistry experiment. If she does it, exactly as she's supposed to, it works. And how do we know it works? Because there are smoke and lights, and there's something that happens that's visual, and that won't happen in real life. And it isn't always that immediate. It's not that instant flip a light switch, oh, your spell worked. Sometimes it's a little more time-consuming. Mm-hmm. And if you have only ever seen it on television, that's really frustrating.
Yeah, it's just not the same, and that is so true. I mean, again, when we had, who did we have on PK? He has every book is turned into a movie.
Oh,
Mesrich. Mr. Mesrich.
Mesrich.
And he said very clearly, the only thing that they care about in Hollywood, they don't have a conspiracy agenda. Believe me, it's all about making money.
It's all about making money.
Yeah, that's all it is. And so when people spin these, conspiracy theories around what they're trying to program us with, it really isn't that way. So it was very interesting to have him on the show and have his take on it, because he's right in the thick of it there with all of his books. Now, here's another question, and this is from Big Bird. Wants to know, is prayer a better spell?
Prayer and spells are on a spectrum. The traditional definition, the difference between prayers and spells, is that prayers are a request and spells are a demand. They work. I think they work nicely hand in hand. I think prayers. You can't go wrong with prayers, but a spell. Many people come to spellcasting in their moments of desperation, when they really, really need something to work for them, whether it's a financial disaster, danger to a loved one, you find yourself in a scary situation. You can play with spells, and there's a lot of joy and happiness and fun in spellcasting, and not as much danger as people would think. I will tell you that the biggest danger in spellcasting is that spells do work. And so be careful what you ask for, because you might get it. and really, really think about it. Really make sure that you're asking for what you want, not for, what you want in a moment of passion or a moment of anger or a moment of jealousy or, everybody else tells you should want this, and so you think you do, but really in your heart you want something totally, you want a different life. Spells at their best are about self-transformation, creating the life that you want. And it tends to be, people become, I'll tell you my experience. I have always been fascinated by magic spells and witches. I think I write an encyclopedia of witchcraft. I have never been anything else for Halloween. Since I literally could walk, that's all I ever wanted. My mother read me fairy tales, and I always felt bad for the witch. Hansel and Gretel, I thought they were terrible children.
Oh, how funny!
So I had that leaning, and in my teens and my 20s, I like a nice candle. I like a perfumed oil. The whole package is very attractive to me. But what transformed me from a dilettante to a true spellcaster is infertility. I was told I was not going to have children unless, my then husband and I did various, medical techniques that really did not appeal to us. And this is going back some years, so this is before infertility technology was as big a deal as it is now, or, there are probably more options now. But going back to prayer, I knew that there were magical options because in the Bible, there is the story of the mandrake root with, the sisters, Rachel and Leah. And the mandrake root can provide love, but it can also stimulate fertility. And so I went looking for a book that would provide all that for me, couldn't find it, and ended up writing. And there's all sorts of fertility information in virtually all my books because that was my gateway into the spellcasting. And I did everything. I researched fertility amulets, magic spells, foods, shrines, you name it. I am my own testimony. I do have children.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. So I know from other people, it might not be that problem. Everybody has their own unique journey. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's an illness that the physicians can't diagnose. People tell you it's all in your mind, and it's not. It's a financial situation, or you are in a family situation that there's no conventional solution that is working for you. And at that point, the magical solution becomes a very real alternative. You don't need a magic spell to go to the store and buy milk. It's easier to just go buy the milk. It's easier to do things. If you can do it the mundane way, it's easier and more predictable. But, there are situations where these are ancient spells, ancient traditions. You find them all over the world. There are two things you will find all over the world: magic spells and ghost stories.
Mm-hmm. Now, how many children do you have?
I have 2.
Congratulations.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. And I think, as you mentioned, everybody has their own gateway, but when you have a desire and you are also coming up against a block, one of the things that I see happens for people, no matter what they use, whether it's prayer or spellcasting, it helps you to hone your focus. So, we tend to be very distracted, easily distracted in our culture, but when you have something like that you really desire, you can turn to any of these methods to help you hone your focus and bringing that brain coherence together, whether you use, again, a spell or prayer. There's the key. So, and the spells are kind of fun, and they use earth-connected things like herbs and oils. And so, there's a lot of fun in that. As you mentioned, a lot of joy, a lot of connection to the planet, and it's not evil.
It's funny that you say that, because that's actually the premise of another of my books. I have a really big spell book, and I have a tiny little spell book, and Magic When You Need It has 150 spells for 75 emergencies, because the most important component of a spell is desire. Exactly what you said. When you either want something so badly, or you're afraid of something happening so badly, that you just find yourself so focused. You don't have to try.
Is there something, excuse me, go right ahead, Penny. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut in.
No, you weren't. Nobody was talking. It's all you. Go.
Well, is there a certain something or a state of mind that you can put yourself in, whether it be through, we'll say a salt bath ahead of time to get rid of anything that may be contaminating or holding you back, or if it's a specific prayer that you could use to bring you into this state of mind where you can start to try and use some of these spells?
You can, although I think different people have different things. The simplest is moonlight. And that sounds so silly, but just the power of the moon. If you can go outside on a new moon or a full moon, and depending where you are, if you can, like the Addams Family used to go moonbathing.
That's true, they did.
That really enhances your power. And I think anything that brings you, it gives you a sense that you're magical. So some people have special clothes or special crystals. I do pray, but I know that doesn't work for everybody. You can bathe in perfumed water. There, bay leaves, which are a simple household item, don't eat them because they're sharp and you can perforate inner organs. So please don't eat them. But bay leaves are magical items. You could just float them in the bath water. And and then throw them away. Don't let them clog your drains either. And
I've heard you can burn them also. You dry them and burn
them. Also, you can burn them. They don't always smell as good as you think they should, but you can burn them. Some people put them. You can put them in a dream pillow and put them under your actual pillow, or if you don't mind investing in a lot of them, you can line your mattress with them. Because the mild aroma enhances your psychic abilities. In Big Book of Practical Spells, there are all sorts of techniques that you can use to raise your magic power. There are different kinds of crystals. There are flower essence remedies. There's a lot of trial and error. What works for one person doesn't always work for the other person. So don't give up too quickly. I always compare it to headaches. If I have a headache and I go to the drugstore and I buy a brand of aspirin and it doesn't work, I don't just say, all these medications don't work. Forget it. I'm just going to suffer. I play around and maybe I'll find some non-pharmaceutical. There are crystals that could help a headache. There are meditation techniques. I play around and I try to find what works for me. And
that's the key, is to exactly what you're saying. Find out what works for you.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to do something a little different. So we are coming up on another break, everybody, but don't go away because we've got a lot more things to talk about. I got a lot of questions in the chat room for you, Judika. We are talking about the fantastic and forgotten, the Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells and other spell books that have been written by Judika. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the monster stuff because that I find so fascinating. So anyways, you guys all stay tuned. You're listening to Supernatural Girlz Radio. We'll be right back.
Listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Just a reminder that Inception Radio Network is on Twitter. Follow us at I_R_N and keep up to date about who's on tonight, what interviews they'll be doing, who's guest spotting, what topics they'll be covering. Tweet to us, tweet about us, retweet topics to your friends, and most importantly, never miss a great show again. That's I_R_N.
Have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
My name is Ezra, and I'm from thehighendorg. You've heard of medical marijuana, but who can you trust for proper guidance? Here at thehighendorg, we have all the information you need. Did you know that scientists have discovered cannabis can reduce inflammation, pain, and spasms? It's helped my patients reduce the symptoms of autoimmune diseases, PTSD, autism, and insomnia. A compound from hemp called CBD is doing wonders for intestinal issues, anxiety, and the nervous system. I sell this compound at thehighendorg. I've worked as a medical marijuana consultant and educator for the past 6 years, and here at thehighendorg, I can help you choose from the hundreds of cannabis strains and products and find the ones that are best for your needs. To learn more about cannabis, schedule a Skype or phone consultation, or to have a CBD product shipped right to your door, visit thehighendorg. That's the high end, all one word, .org. I'll help make your health high-end.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the live request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Are you ready for a new experience of freedom and powerful connection? Would you like a positive, effortless change in your life? Then come to CosmicFusion.com, where we offer the most advanced energy clearing and expansion techniques in the world, with a quantum vortex energy to activate your divine blueprint and life's purpose. When your soul leads the way with cosmic fusion and quantum vortex energy, you can break clear of past difficulties and blocks with the power of the source. With cosmic fusion, the source energy does the work for you. It's easy and effortless. Listen to our free meditation right from our Cosmic Fusion website, the Cosmic Code Meditation. Sign up for one of our interactive webinars today. Come to Cosmic Fusion, www.KOSMICfusion.com, to experience an effortless awakening and transformation. Are you ready for an upgrade?
Are you ready for a new experience of living in the fifth dimensional magic and powerful connection? Then visit CosmicFusion.com today. CosmicFusion.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girlz Radio. I am your host, Patricia Baker. I'm here with my co-host, PK, and our tremendous guest tonight. Very impressive lady, Judika Illes, and she is the author of some terrific books. One that you should buy just to read out loud on Halloween night, The Fantastic and Forgotten. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful book that is. Transformative stories from olden times. They are terrific. And Judika is also the author of many other books, including the Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells. Now, on the break, PK, you were asking a question about newbies. What would be the first book that Judika would recommend? So.
Right. I think that it's very important if we're going to put our feet in the water that we know which way we're going. But she had mentioned the big book predictions of spiritual. That's wonderful. And then 1,000 Spells. There's so much information, Judika. Oh,
thank you. I really love these topics. So it's really a joy to share them with other people, because many of the topics that I write about are written about very badly in other places, or just really sensationally, and these are substantial topics and things that are, worthy of discussion. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Well, that's terrific. We love having you here, that's for sure. Now, got another question, and this is from Elisa. She would like to know, are there any spells we can use on our animals for healing?
Oh, yeah, there are a lot of them. There's all sorts of spells. There are a lot of traditional spells that are, to bless animals, to keep them safe. There's a whole section in 5,000 Spells. 5,000 Spells is arranged by spell topic, and I believe the first one after the introduction are animal spells, and these are spells that are intended to benefit animals. So, I don't approve of any animal cruelty. So there's nothing in there about, there are no spells in that book that involve animal cruelty, because that's,
good.
Don't do it.
That's right.
Yeah, we need to be honorable, ethical, kind people. And if your spells are done from a position of love and respect and not anger and not jealousy, then you will be fine. But there are a lot of things you can do. There are magic spells to benefit. I talk about flower essences in 5,000 Spells, and in my book, Big Book of Practical Spells, flower essence remedies are these little alchemical potions. Most people know Rescue Remedy, but there's all kinds, and there are flower essences that are made especially for animals, and I found them very useful. I'm an animal lover, and I thought dogs, cats, birds, fish, so, that's a very useful thing. And, I also have a book on saints and spirits, and you can ask for blessings from the higher powers, whether it's St. Francis, the patron saint of all animals, St. Gertrude, matron saint of cats, the goddess Hecate, who is a lover of dogs. There is a lot of things you can do to keep our animal friends safe.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so there's one more question I wanted to get to, and then we want to hear about your ghost story.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. Have there been any cases in the Fantastic and Forgotten, where there are stories of vampires or werewolves or things like that have been presented in any scientific journals? That is a question from Daria.
No, because these are fiction stories. These are the stories. I'm sure there are cases that have been presented, but these particular stories are they're vintage esoteric fiction. They're stories written by masters of the short story, many of whom were also fascinated by the supernatural and involved with organizations like the Golden Dawn. And so they're bringing more than just some storytelling skill to the stories, but these were presented as fiction for all sorts of reasons, and that is what they are. They were not written in a style that would be presented in front of any sort of scientific board.
Okay. So now you said you've had a lot of experience with seeing people that have passed to the other side of the veil. You've seen these people all your life, and we asked on the break if you had a particularly spooky story, and you said you have a very interesting ghost story.
I do.
Do tell.
In general, my particular ghost stories are very personal. I just see them. And, I'm a believer in every house is haunted. Most ghosts are just the silent majority, and they don't cause any trouble. And I just, I see them, and I go about my business, and they go about their business, and that's it. But I did have this very interesting experience years ago when I was first married. So this is going back to the mid-1980s, and at that time, we had moved into a townhouse, and this townhouse had once been a single residence, post-Civil War townhouse, but, as time goes on, it had been split into apartments, and my landlord lived on the first floor, and he was an elderly widow, and then I lived on the second floor with my spouse, and on the third floor was another couple. And sometimes, and it was an old building, old brownstone, you had no elevator, you would walk. And sometimes I would come into the building, and I would, as you walked into the lobby, you would see the beginning of the staircase, and I would see a ghost sitting on the front of the bottom step, and she would kind of, I also a firm believer, if you can see them, they can see you. So,
right.
Yeah, so there was that second where, I would open the door, and, our eyes would meet, and it seemed to be very amorphous, very ephemeral shape, but clearly feminine, older woman. And we had that moment of our eyes meeting, and then she would just sort of fade away. And I always felt she was a little bit impatient with me. I interrupted her, and I wasn't who she wanted to see. And then I'd go upstairs to, my apartment, and I wouldn't, and I've done this since childhood, I don't really think about it very much. It just sort of is a natural thing. Meanwhile, in this apartment, my elderly landlord would lock up, he was an older man, and he would lock up the house at night. If you did not tell him that you would be home late, we did have keys, we wouldn't be locked out, but he would turn off all the lights. And I was married to someone who had poor vision, and I actually have good night vision, and when we would come home and we would forget to tell our landlord, he would insist that in order to turn on the light so he could get up the stairs, I would have to walk up the stairs in the dark and flip the light switch, which was all the way at the top.
Oh.
So there was a light switch at the top of the building, and then there was one within my landlord's apartment. So I would walk up the stairs in the dark, and I would flip the switch, and then my spouse would follow me upstairs. And I just thought this was because he had poor vision. Months later, we were invited by our upstairs neighbors to have brunch. And we came, and they were very lovely people, and we had a couple of mimosas. And having had a couple of mimosas, the woman started laughing, and she goes, "Have you seen the ghost?" And, I was quiet, spouse was quiet, and she starts to describe exactly what I've been seeing.
Oh, the woman?
Oh.
Yes, she had the exact same experience. And before she gets halfway through, my spouse finishes the story.
What?
4 people. Yes. The real reason he wouldn't go up and flip the light is because he thought there was a ghost on the stairs.
Somebody said you
tell me.
so much.
He
So
let
let
me
Judika
go up and do it. Which, maybe, we're not married anymore. And
now I know why.
That might be a reason.
Won't be married anymore.
He let me go up the stairs without telling me there might be a ghost there. But all 4 of us had seen the exact same thing, had the same experience. The ghost was not looking for us and would just kind of fade away when we interrupted her and come back. But I've always found this fascinating because, all of us had the same experience independently. And so I think that's like, it's really real. Because, if it's just you, well, maybe it's your imagination, maybe it's something, but we all had the exact same experience.
Did anybody ever talk to her and find out what she was doing there?
I always thought she was my landlord's wife who had passed away, and she was waiting for him.
Oh, okay.
And she had lived in that house. That had been her house.
Oh, uh-huh.
I'm not even sure it had been divided into apartments until after she died. So I think we were all an aggravation to her. She never bothered anybody. She was just there. Depending on how frightened you are of ghosts or not, she was just there. No, I think the neighbor upstairs did once try to speak with her, but she was gone. She didn't want to speak with us. I think she saw us as the intruders. We were the ones who did not belong in that house.
Yeah, and did the landlord ever see her, or no? You guys did, but not him, probably.
He was a scientist, and we did not ask him.
Oh.
Oh, God.
If he hadn't, he may be asking you to leave. He just don't.
Right. Well, he controlled the rent, and he was a lovely man, and he's no longer. He was old, and he's no longer with us. And I guess the opportunity has passed. But people don't always take these questions very well.
No, they don't, especially scientists and engineers. They don't see it the same way we do. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you do readings for people. Let's talk about that a little bit. And you use tarot cards?
I love divination. I love the whole thing. I do mainly tarot cards. I incorporate some astrology. I do tea leaf reading also, but mainly tarot cards.
Mm-hmm.
How did you learn tea leaf reading? I find that fascinating.
I drink a lot of tea.
So
I drink tea all day, and I love tea. And in order, I teach tea leaf reading. It's really fun. It's very relaxing. It's very old school. I've had my coffee grounds read too. I had a friend who very accurately read my coffee grounds, but I'm not a coffee drinker. You need nice, long tea leaves in order to do it. And there's a tendency, people will just rip open a tea bag, but the tea leaves that are in tea bags are damaged and broken and tiny. And so, it's all trial and error. You want to find nice leaves that actually form shapes.
It sounds like fun.
Yeah, when I'm reading tea leaves, I'll invest in some better tea. If only, and it very much like card reading. If I read for you in person, I'll hand you my cards to shuffle. The equivalent with tea leaf reading is you have to have at least a couple sips of the tea.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what personalizes it. This is going to be, your leaves, your reading.
I've had it done a couple of times, and found it very unique how they could put that together, and what they've come up with was quite accurate.
Yeah. Now, this is an old tradition. Is this part of your Hungarian heritage? Is this something that You think your great-grandmother did or something like that?
My family was more into palmistry, and it's probably, and I'll be honest, I would like to be better at it. It is not my forte, so I did not get those genes. The palmistry is really I would say, if you were going back in time, probably the family divination system. But I wish I was better at it than I am.
So was your mother very psychically attuned? Your grandmother, your grandfather?
My mother was, I never knew my grandparents, but my mother was what they call a true dreamer. My mother would dream things before they happened. She dreamt things about my college roommate that I had planned not to tell her.
Oh, you can't get away with much then with someone like that.
But then she told me her dreams, and they were so accurate. How can you not respond to that? So, my mother was a very psychic person, although my mother would go through periods of saying, I don't believe in that, there is no such thing. Oh, let me tell you what I dreamed. And
cute.
Yeah, that's powerful. Well, yeah, it just seems like you have a heritage of a lot of psychic abilities in your family. I mean, that's how it feels to me. So for you to turn out these beautiful books, which obviously took so much time and effort, it's wonderful. It's like you're bringing your heritage forward. Now, was anybody in your family actually a practicing witch?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, you stumped her for a moment there.
Probably a couple of us. Probably, everybody's got their secrets in their closet.
I know, really. Too bad they don't have like a genetic test for that. Yeah, my aunt saw
that is one of the theories. And, I'm not saying whether this is accurate or not accurate. This is, there's a paranormal theory that, what they call the witch blood, that derives from, those angels, the watchers, who had those relations with human women in, the book of Genesis, and sort of the, I guess, even so diluted, a tiny, tiny little bit of rebel angel ancestry, creates metaphysical inclinations. So,
how interesting.
Yeah, you'll occasionally see, if you go online, you'll see writings about that. If you Google witch blood, you'll get all sorts of interesting theories. When I did the new edition of Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, that was one of the things I added in there, because it wasn't there. The original edition was written 10 years earlier, and it wasn't really discussed. But now I see a lot of discussions. I guess with the increase in interest in genealogy and DNA and ancestry, I think that people are hoping that in the same way that now they can discern how much Neanderthal ancestry an individual may have, I think there are people who are hoping to find ways of determining angelic ancestry. And, it's fascinating.
It is fascinating, and I hope they do find a way to trace this back to the Anunnaki or whoever they were back then.
Yeah, exactly.
That got involved with our race as humans. And I've heard this a lot, too, from abductees and from other people who have studied the phenomenon of ET abduction, and they say there's something different about the DNA of the people that have been abducted. And here we are back to vampire blood, right? We're talking about what's in the blood, what's the DNA that makes one person be a likely candidate for an abduction and someone else never a candidate for that.
Right.
So,
what is it that's so attractive? Right.
Yes. So there's got to be something in the DNA that connects us.
There are those theories that ET abductions, how similar the stories are to the older stories about fairy abductions that you hear in Ireland and elsewhere through Europe. And, this is before people maybe had a concept of flight or spaceships. But there's also that genetic where people claim, certain families claim to have fairy ancestry. It's very interesting.
That is. I have not heard that before, that people were claiming to have fairy ancestry, but why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Play on the cloud.
I did come across one woman who had passed at a young age. And she had, when I went to communicate with her, she had gone back to the fairy realm. That's where she came from. So it was surprising, but it also made her very fragile in human form and likely to die young, unfortunately, for her and her family members. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much to this DNA and who we're connected to.
Yeah.
But Hungarian is your heritage.
Yeah.
That's a strong bunch of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's the theories, and I certainly don't, subscribe to this, but there's all kinds of theories that, Hungarian is such a unique language that it's related to extraterrestrial languages. So who knows? Maybe it is.
No kidding, really?
Yeah.
Do you speak the language?
I understand it. I did as a child. I don't really speak anymore. But I always think of, there's that old movie, Queen of Outer Space, with Zsa Zsa Gabor. And was there any truth to that?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is fascinating. And this is why I think also, like you talk about witch blood, some people are really drawn to witchcraft. Some people are really drawn to casting spells. It's their thing, it's their tribe.
Right.
And so they find each other, they have covens, they have groups and whatever. But yeah, there is, I think this something that we don't quite understand yet. We feel it. And we're drawn to it for certain reasons.
I think we're just at the tip of, knowledge. There's so much we don't know. And I hope that we live in a world where we can expand our knowledge and share our knowledge with each other around the world and just, really make our leaps and bounds in comprehension.
Yeah, exactly.
That tip of the Aquarian age.
I'll tell you, we've had a lot of witches, prominent witches on the show, and I'm always impressed by the communities that they're in. Mm-hmm. The communities seem so supportive and so loving. It's a really wonderful family. And again, that's very impressive when you look around and see how much discord there is in just a traditional family. But, so many of these people that are high profile, that have written books, have been on the show. And again, they talk about their communities. You see their communities communicating in social media. And there is this intense respect, love, appreciation, and a gentleness about a lot of these communities. It's really beautiful to see in the world today.
Yep.
Now, are you a part of a coven or anything like that, or are you?
I am not. I am a solitary practitioner. I had a very informal coven many years ago, but no longer. I am. I write a lot. I travel. I'm a very sort of independent person.
You're Hungarian. That's what you people do.
I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said, you asked how I wrote the book, and I said I didn't sleep. But it's true. I wrote around the clock and just sort of created my own schedule for myself. And, people become very impatient with me.
Oh, but you're such a hard worker. Definitely that.
That's about it.
Goodness, all the shame here, Judika. My goodness. Really? No, these books are outstanding. And again, that's what I'm going to be doing on Halloween night, is reading aloud from the fantastic and forgotten.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Thank you.
Yeah, it is such a great book. And again, as you mentioned, it's a follow-up to the first book that came out.
R&D Cult, yeah.
And Lon talked to us about all of those stories and the significance of them. There is a lot of significance to these stories, and let us not forget to mention that. I mean, even though they're fiction, there is great significance to them. And as you mentioned earlier in the show, reading between the lines, you can learn a lot.
I like that you could read them on different levels. If you want to read them as entertainment, you can. But there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge and information in these stories. There's something called the woman's ghost story, And for the ghost hunters out there, it's an interesting story. I thought it was valuable. I included it in the book because I thought it gave valuable information, especially to people who are just starting out.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Judika, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show with us to talk about myths.
Thank you for having me.
Monsters, the fantastic and forgotten, the Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells. Oh my gosh, so much great literature from you. Thank you. Yes, and so we're going to have you back because I know you're going to write another book. So
that she is.
Okay,
just let us know.
Thank you.
Now, next week, everybody, we've got Ghost Hunting Gone Bad. Something Wicked. The author's going to be with us next week to tell us a real hair-raising story of what happened to her. So in the meantime, have a great week, and we will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Good night.